Hello everyone, my name is Michaela Salacup and I am doing my presentation on economic development, specifically diversity and inclusion. For this presentation, I interviewed Claudia Bellany Atanga. She is currently the manager of conference content for International Economic Development Council, which is also known as IEC. Previous to this, she worked with Charles County and she was an economic research specialist. Claudia is also the first African American woman in the country to receive the C2ER research designation, which is the highest industry standard for recognizing excellence in economic research. With her receiving this recognition, it basically means that she is at the highest level of mastery of economic-related data analysis. So it kind of really ties into her work that she's doing right now with the International Economic and Development Council. Right now, in her current role, Claudia oversees 4 annual conferences and organizes keynote speakers. So a lot of the responsibilities fall on her to kind of organize and bring together these speakers from different backgrounds that can bring something new and fresh to the table. And something that she said that she's really passionate about is being able to include a lot of diverse individuals and give people an opportunity to really show what they are working with and kind of just broaden people's understandings for different issues within economic development and in the public sector. Claudia also spoke to me about how she ended up in this role. She originally got her master's in business administration, but has a very strong background in economics. So one of her instructors actually said that she should really look into more of an economics-based career since she really excelled in that. So that's kind of like what she did, and she ended up in this industry. And within this industry, she has really made huge steps in shifting the narrative about diversity and inclusion and really making these huge steps that can alter how people might view economic development and the value of adding diversity into different industries and companies. When speaking with Claudia, I prompted her with various questions, one of which being, what is one problem you recognize within economic development? She responded with a few answers, one of which being the lack of diversity, wealth gap, and also the transfer of knowledge. Starting with lack of diversity, she not only views the lack of racial diversity, but also the lack of age diversity as one of the largest issues. She spoke about how many positions are filled with individuals that are older. So you see a lot of these higher ups in companies that have been sitting in these positions for a long time, have been doing what they've been doing for a long time, and possibly even being great at it, but not as open to changing their ways and maybe shifting how they view economic development and just even how they view the next steps for their company. Since a lot of these people are staying in their positions for a long time, it kind of limits the amount of younger talent that is coming in. So you don't really get that fresh view of something as the public is also changing their views. So you don't get that fresh new take on something that they've been doing time and time again that can really benefit the company, and so they can continue to grow with the times. Claudia was also speaking on how there aren't really as many opportunities for people with different backgrounds, such as race and socioeconomic status. And again, with companies just accepting this lack of diversity, it limits them and their growth and can limit the talent that they are receiving from limiting the individuals that might be able to take on these larger positions. Another issue that Claudia touched on was the wealth gap. So because of these communities and individuals and companies that don't really get that same exposure as larger companies, it kind of limits their growth and then also just doesn't get their story and their knowledge out to different public individuals or even just community members. Something Claudia really tried to stress was that if you start to include these individuals and start to hear about these stories of minorities that are really coming up and sharing their own experiences, it can really benefit the whole industry itself. Another issue that was kind of touched on was the transfer of knowledge. And this is specifically within larger organizations. And when these individuals that leave their positions, that maybe they've been there in that position for years, there's not a true transfer of knowledge from one person to the next. A lot of times, especially nowadays, I think that there's a lot of value in getting those new thoughts and those new ideas and being able to adapt with the change, but there isn't really that great of a transfer of the knowledge from one person to the next. A lot of times you can't just go in and completely switch things up and flip things on their heads and completely forget how things have been running for years already. So she was just speaking on how oftentimes even in, the public sector, not just in large organizations such as companies, but there's oftentimes a lack of full transfer of knowledge. So something that maybe was being done the same way constantly for years just wasn't fully communicated to that other individual who's taking on the position, and can sometimes halt progress, and it can sometimes cause a lot of disruptions within the organization itself, and kind of limit success that the company might be experiencing in that moment. So I am really thankful for Claudia for sharing her thoughts, because I don't think that I would really read a lot about the transfer of knowledge between individuals and companies, but something that she really kind of flagged, and she really said that it was something that she was concerned about and something that she even tries to assist in bettering. When doing my own research, I did find a lot of information regarding diversity in the workplace and the diversity among board members within companies. And it just touches on how the United States has been increasingly becoming more and more diverse, and more minorities are actually making it through higher educations and allowing themselves to kind of climb the ladder to these larger positions that have a lot of pull in how the company might function and how they're interacting with the community. In the past, there has been a lot of focus on increasing the diversity of genders within these larger positions, which has really increased over time. But something that is not really documented as well is something that Claudia touched on, which is the diversity within the age of these larger positions, of the people that hold these larger positions. So I think that was kind of something interesting, and maybe something that will kind of come out more now as we're getting a little bit more diverse with the racial backgrounds of individuals. On the slide, I included a few visuals regarding diversity in genders and also diversity within different racial backgrounds, just to kind of give people a good understanding of how diverse these larger companies really are. On the bottom visual, there is the pie charts of the different racial and ethnicity backgrounds of individuals. As you can see, 80.5% are Caucasian and white, and that's kind of something that Claudia also touched on. And she also brought up the good old boy network, and that is something that I was really unfamiliar with, that term. So I did have to, do a little bit of research, and I found out that it just is a term that refers to the informal system of friendships and connections through men, which basically just touches on how they use their positions of influence by providing favors for one another for more information for other men. So basically, it kind of just talks about how men help each other out in these larger positions, kind of like an I scratch your back, you scratch mine. And she was just saying how it's definitely something that is prevalent in these larger organizations, and even just within the public sector itself. Within these various levels of government, there oftentimes is this good old boy network, which I think is very interesting. Another question I prompted Claudia with was, what are some approaches that she feels can combat the issues that she previously identified? And she responded with advocacy, awareness, and promotion. Within her position, she tries to really give people the opportunity to prove themselves and kind of succeed. So she was giving me an example of how she gave this younger professional an opportunity to have a larger presentation at a conference, and she said that it was like rolling the dice because it can kind of go either way, and her colleagues could have kind of frowned upon it because she's giving this larger spot to someone that might not be as well known or highly recognized, but she took a chance on this professional, and they actually did a really great job with it. And from that professional was able to then get a larger position within this within a organization. So just taking those chances on people and allowing them to kind of speak their piece and kind of touch on like what they've been working on and maybe bring more stories to the forefront. Something that she really tried to kind of stress was that these conferences are a chance for professionals to kind of come together and learn more about each other's work that they're currently doing and learn from each other. So she really tries to include as much diversity as she can within these conferences that can really strike awareness in other individuals about certain issues that might be happening right now in various sectors and various parts of the country. So that's just something that she personally has been trying to do within her position, which I think is really amazing that she's kind of that person that's really an advocate for people that might not be as well known or might not have as much experience. But again, she said that one thing that she kind of tries to focus on are those younger professionals. So yeah. Something else that she tries to really implement is the Young Professionals Roundtable, which she helped organize, which I think is also another great opportunity for younger professionals to kind of have that support system and really try to learn from each other so they can become successful in their own field, in their own department, and really kind of grow their organization. By bringing awareness to these individuals and by bringing awareness to different minority issues can really help with diversity and really open people's eyes to kind of the need of diversity. And that's something that she spoke on, was that a lot of higher up individuals within these organizations contact her and ask for help to diversify their organization. And I think that's something that's really great about these larger organizations that she's been working with, is that these people also understand the importance of diversity and the importance of getting new minds into their organization and kind of shifting things for the good. I think nothing bad can come from a good, diverse group of people just working together collaborating on a common project. So that's just kind of something that she has been kind of helping companies on, because they also see their need to kind of diversify and really make sure that they include a lot of minorities in different issues and kind of bring more issues to the forefront so maybe the public can learn more and kind of support maybe these communities or businesses that are trying to grow. So recommended approaches. Something that we can start doing is holding states accountable for hitting their benchmarks, making sure that we are putting diversity as a top priority, making sure that there are systems in play to kind of help transfer knowledge down from one processor to another. By doing this, we can strengthen governments, we can strengthen organizations, and become more inclusive to just new ideas, as well as inclusive to people with different backgrounds. And by doing that, we're able to then bring to the table a lot more different discussions and ideas that can help grow and flourish communities. Also, by making these benchmarks specific to different communities or different government systems, it allows there to be a little bit more customization, and so people can then target areas of concern. Another recommended approach would be to create a system to better transfer knowledge from one person to another. And by doing this, we can then make governments responsible for the transfer of knowledge. And putting it at that level, they can really kind of nitpick what is important, what are some things that can help the next person that takes on a position really succeed. Also, by putting this on kind of the agenda for a lot of communities and governments, they're then able to kind of go forward with be proactive and kind of start to write down things that might be important. And by collecting all this information and by being proactive at writing down steps on what they're doing, who they're contacting, and what kind of community members that they're getting involved, it can then help set up a blueprint for maybe them in the future, and then also for other organizations that might be needing some help. So again, it's not even just the transfer of knowledge from one person to the next, but also it can, go from one community to another and kind of help everyone succeed across the board. One way to hold governments accountable for this would be to make funding contingent on these various areas of growth. By showing communities and governments that you are putting these various areas of growth as a priority, they can then also put it as their priority and hopefully make these large changes and just kind of better their communities in the long run. By making these things almost like benchmarks for communities to receive funding, it can ensure that concerns are addressed in an appropriate manner. Something else that can be done on a larger state level, but also as a community level, is create these panel of diversity by inviting people from different backgrounds to come together, collaborate, and learn more from each other. It can then strengthen governments and organizations and kind of give people a look into maybe what people are doing in different parts of, their own community or even different parts of the state. By learning from each other's strengths and weaknesses, there can be a better overall understanding of maybe how communities might be functioning right now, and maybe just a better insight into what challenges people are facing. To be successful in all these things, something that me and Claudia spoke about was that trust and rapport are very important. When you want to make these large moves to communities and organizations, you really want to make sure that you create a rapport with people so they trust you and they are willing to kind of follow where you lead them. Also, something that Claudia spoke on was one reason why she thinks she has been very successful in kind of increasing diversity in her own professional role is to also include a lot of data in what she is reporting and what she is trying to incorporate into her work. So like she said, men and women lie, numbers don't. So that's something else that is very important when you're trying to show people these big changes that you have in mind and things that you want to do. It's really important to kind of back it with valid information where there's something to kind of lean back on. So I think those three things are really important and can really aid in any work that anyone does in the public sector going forward, or in any sector actually. But trust, rapport, and numbers can really help you make some large changes and really help you with that, create that momentum of change and betterment. So in conclusion, some things that me and Claudia spoke on and we identified as problems within economic development were lack of diversity, not only with socioeconomic status or racial backgrounds, but also with age. Equal opportunities, making sure that there is a diverse background of people so you can really learn from each other and create those opportunities for younger professionals to also come up and really speak their minds and kind of make those large changes that they would like to see. And then also the transfer of knowledge from one person to the next, and it can even be bigger than that, from one community to another. And by doing so, there can be more of a transparency and also a lot more growth for all individuals that are involved, as well as a larger community and state level. To help address these issues, something that can be done is make conscious efforts to increase diversity and exposure to different people and minorities and backgrounds. By doing so, you open up a grand forum for people to come and just collaborate, learn from each other, and just really push themselves to kind of better organizations and better communities. You also can get a better understanding of where communities are standing with certain topics and issues, and kind of understand more where attention needs to be placed. To ensure that these changes are made, governments can begin to be held accountable, and by doing this, they can measure benchmarks, and from that, they can receive funding. Another way to ensure that there's a good transfer of knowledge from one person to another would also be to kind of create a plan for policymakers and public officials to kind of start to collect information so they can then share it with others. By holding others accountable and making sure that they understand that certain things are priorities and certain things need to be better addressed, more changes can be made, and it can then better these issues that were previously identified.